The other day, I was browsing deep into Reddit when I found this photo of what appeared to be some American soldiers in Vietnam. But looking closely at the photo, I noticed something interesting. They were carrying MP-40s weapons from World War II. If that's the case, these MP-40s must have traveled a long way. So I thought it was something isolated, but no, after digging deeper I found a lot more. And there was an American commando unit that used weapons that don't really seem to fit with what was conventional in this war. Like Carl Gustaf M45 submachine guns, similar to the M3 RPD machine guns, AKM rifles, and the craziest of all, MP-40 submachine guns. But why were American soldiers using these weapons, and why were they wearing such strange uniforms, different from standard soldiers? It all has to do with logistics. And well, these kinds of things happen when you mix war with international politics. Vietnam was a difficult country for distributing logistics. It's like the Chile of Southeast Asia. Once the country was divided in 1954, a demilitarized zone was created between both countries. If North Vietnam wanted to support its southern insurgents logistically, it had to be more ingenious. Using the sea was a very bad idea since it was heavily guarded by South Vietnam's allies, and the air wasn't a very good option either. Therefore, they used their neighboring countries, Laos and Cambodia. In those years, Laos was mired in a complicated civil war against the Pathet Lao, a communist guerrilla group supported by North Vietnam and Cambodia. Well, it declared itself completely neutral during the war and discreetly allowed any North Vietnamese construction. Therefore, North Vietnam established the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a huge logistical network of 16,000 kilometers made up of paved roads and highways. An act of war in which they moved to the city of Laos, in which they moved to the city of invasion. The network was incredibly secure and stable, but when the United States entered the war, this entire set of roads was literally impregnable. It could really be attacked physically but not legally. You see, there was a time long ago when the United States actually cared about how the world perceived them and their international policy. Laos and Cambodia, in the eyes of the international community, were declared neutral countries, so if the United States invaded them, that would complicate their global diplomatic position. However, attacking the Ho Chi Minh Trail was vital, and destroying this entire mega logistics network would collapse the Viet Cong's defenses. But as we said, it wasn't possible to bomb or attack conventionally, so the CIA did its thing. The United States would create a special secret command, the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group, or by its initials, MACV-SOG. And even though its name sounds bureaucratic, it was actually a highly competent elite group focused on operating in extremely risky environments where no one would come to help them if they were captured. The goal was to insert them into neutral countries so they could carry out missions to gather intelligence, attack, and destroy these posts and logistical routes that made the Viet Cong so strong. And while they were at it, they would also hinder any communist insurgency in the area. For this, they would surpass them. The members of this special group were not supposed to have any apparent connection to the US Army. They didn't wear uniforms with insignias or names, and often these uniforms were completely different from the American ones, and, of course, they didn't carry any documents. They operated together with elite soldiers from South Vietnam to blend in as local insurgents, and clearly, they couldn't carry weapons that could identify them as American soldiers. Because of this, throughout the war, they used many unusual weapons. In fact, the list is over 40 weapons long. It's pretty extensive. But why did they specifically use the MP-40? It's a very strange choice. There were much better modern options, and the answer will surprise you. The French had a long and disastrous campaign in Indochina during the 1950s. The French, still recovering from World War II, couldn't properly equip their men, so they chose to extensively use captured German weapons. The Soviets gave the North Vietnamese a limited but considerable number of captured German weapons that had survived the war. This means that the MP-40 and STG-44 were extremely common in the region and were an excellent choice for pretending to be insurgents. Operators of the MACV-SOG also had the authority to choose their weapons as long as they couldn't be traced back to the US Army. So, put yourself in the shoes of a Green Beret from the 1960s. If you were asked to choose your weapon and needed a compact gun with a light cartridge to carry lots of ammo, and it also had to be very reliable, what would you choose? Putting it that way, there's only one viable option. The CIA could get any weapon in the world that the operators decided to choose. Also, with these men you could see a lot of crazy things. Viet Cong weapons were also quite common. Chinese Type 56s and Soviet AKMs were a common choice since their sound was unmistakable. When the enemies heard these weapons, they thought it was Allied soldiers firing. Cut-down RPD machine guns were also very common. And although I couldn't find photos of soldiers, weapons like the STG-44 were also preferred by some MACV-SOG operators. Photos of these soldiers are really limited since for obvious reasons they were secret operations in inhospitable areas. However, they are enough to determine that what history books say about MACV-SOG is real. By conflict's end, they received better weapons. Because American weapons were captured among Viet Cong ranks, by the end of the conflict, MACV-SOG could use American weapons. A special carbine was even created for them, the XM177, the predecessor of the M4 carbine. If you're wondering how these men did operating in the neutral countries, well, they managed to establish a gigantic secret base in the jungle called Long Tieng. From there, they directed reconnaissance operations, rescued downed pilots in the jungle, and provided targets for bombing the Vietnamese supply route. These men were often surrounded by entire battalions, extractions under fire were common, and they ended up being the unit with the highest casualty rate in the entire conflict. In the end, the supply network could never be destroyed since it was larger than what the MACV-SOG could locate. Additionally, the damage caused to the infrastructure was easily repairable. It was an entire network of 20,000 kilometers of dirt roads, bridges, and other systems that just 100 men and some targeted bombings could never completely destroy. Despite their great bravery in combat, almost all the operations were in vain. Why did the MP-40 have a hook under the barrel? In this video you'll see the answer. Thanks for watching this video and goodbye.